Good morning. So, I want to talk about the pain during your spiritual awakening. There is a certain amount of pain that must be there when we are overcoming ourselves and changing. There's a lot of pain in change. There's a lot of fear in change as well because we're moving into the unknown. Everything that we have known until now it starts falling apart, and we don't even feel like we know ourselves. The spiritual awakening is a process of finding our own selves. But I do want to speak about coming out of the pain, because there is a certain amount of pain that we do have to go through, and we do have to work out within ourselves in order to overcome ourselves, and in order to allow ourselves to grow. There is going to be pain in that, and there has to be pain in that. um, and it's like uh, it's just like giving birth. The process of giving birth is so painful, but that initiates you for your parenthood, because this child came into the world with so much pain that when they come, first of all, the amount of relief that you receive when they're born is just immense. As a woman, and you've gone through childbirth, and you know what I'm talking about. There's just a sense of complete release. And then you go from such a contrast of so much pain into just pure love. You just love this child. And kind of like when you birth something, the more pain you experience, the more you appreciate what it is that you have birthed. So there is a certain amount of pain that the more pain you feel, the sweeter the reward is. There's also an element that you could say the harder you work for something to achieve something, and you have to really work for it and figure it out, and you work hard, and the more deserving you feel of it. When you really work for, let's say you want a new car, and you go out and you find what car you want, and you really start to you start working really hard and collecting all the money, and you work for 12 hours a day, and then when you finally buy that car, first of all, you appreciate it, and second of all, you feel deserving of it. You feel like it is rightfully yours. And it's kind of like that on the spiritual awakening too. As you go through, if it was just given to you, there would be, just handed over to you, there wouldn't be that the process of really yearning for it and wanting it and working towards it and figuring yourself out and going through all of the um, living hell that you go through during this process. And then when you get to one of these plateaus, or you get to an achievement on your spiritual awakening, the taste is just so sweet. It's like divine. There's nothing like it. And that is part of it. But I do want to talk about shifting in the pain, because we do get to these places where we start getting into loops, and we can get stuck on one of these steps, and we can get stuck in the victim mode. We can get stuck in the unknowing. And there is something to, there's so many different aspects of this spiritual awakening, and there is no one path. There is no one right way. And as you go through it, that's why you learn how to be so flexible, because once you think you figured something out, you realize, wait a minute, there's so much more to figure. And it seems like, you find patterns, but when you find patterns, and you crack code, there's more codes appear, and more complex codes appear, and more complex codes appear, until you become completely fluid in your mind, and you become flexible. And that's part of the spiritual awakening as well, because at the soul level, there are no boundaries. There are no, all of the patterns and the boundaries and the codes are written in the archetypes. They're written in the ego. They're written in the physical plane. And the soul level is simply an observer. There is no right, there is no wrong. There's just what is. It's just a state of being, a state of purity. And so as we go through the spiritual awakening, not only do we start finding all these patterns and defining, being able to really see through things through these patterns, It's because we're lifting out of the patterns. And so your mind starts becoming more and more and more flexible. You start seeing yourself as this flexible being. And sometimes we can get caught in these loops of pain during our spiritual awakening, and it can feel like we're stuck. And in these places, what I've found is that there is no use to just sit in the pain. Um, if we're going around in the same loops and we're not getting answers, there is an element of going through the pain and feeling the pain to its extremities. Um, I'm talking about getting stuck in a loop of pain, where people can get stuck in these loops of pains for years, going around and around and around in the same muck hole. And and what you can do, and that's what I want to talk about, is pulling yourself out of these muck holes that you get stuck in, out of these loops that feed themselves. And typically they're like these loops of pain where you are the victim within. And the victim it can be expressed in many different ways. It can be, the victim is also somebody that lashes out, is also feels like they're the victim of circumstance. That's why they're lashing out. Or there could be, the victims that go within and, oh, poor me, and what the world is doing to me. And a lot of times these archetypes are really sneaky. They're like little demons within you, these little archetypes, these little behaviors, these little loops of behaviors. We feel like we've overcome the big behaviors, the big obvious ones. But then there's these little tiny loops, these little whirlpools within us that all of a sudden, you start finding these little sneaky ones that are holding on to you from the inside. And you could see it as entities wanting to, because these entities, these expressions, these archetypes, they get their expression through the human experience. So if you could see them as something as like a separate entity from you, like an archetype could be an entity, right? It could be this behavior, could be, it's not me, because I am my pure form, my pure soul, my observer person. But these little archetypes, these little entities that are within me, you could call them demons, you could call them jinns, you could call them archetypes, you could call them my behaviors, you could call them my ego faucets, you could call them whatever you want to call them. But if you are able to separate them from yourself and kind of look at them from the observer point, then you could see how it's catching you in these little tiny loops of behavior. And so a lot of times there is no sense in sitting in those little loops, because you're getting the same answers over and over and over, and it's painful. So what I want to talk about is how you can shift out of the pain in order to, rise above these little loops. It's just taking your focus and putting it somewhere else, and deciding that the first part of it, because sometimes when you're in these loop pains, that's all you feel. You're so far stuck in the loop that you can't even see the way out. And the thing is a lot of times we want to stay in these loops. So the first stage is knowing that you want to remove yourself from the loop of pain, that you want to remove yourself from the pain. Because a lot of times sitting in the pain gives you an out. Oh, it's like it's the victim. I'm sitting in this pain. So, um, it gives you like a feeling almost of security, or a feeling of it's not my doing, it's out of my control. So it gives you like this warm blanket that you can cover excuses. um, so the first stage is even, sometimes you can't right away shift. It's like you can't go from 0 to 100. You have to go through the different stages. And sometimes if you're so far down, it's difficult to see the light at the end of at the end of the tunnel. The end of the tunnel is way, way over there. You can't even see the light. You're still sitting so far in the dark, but you can decide that you want to come out of the pain. And you'd be surprised how quickly, when you truly make the decision that you want to come out of the pain, how quickly you can come out of the pain. Because once you realize that you can, you will. Once you realize that you can and that you want to, then it's a skip and a jump. Once you realize that you want to come out of that pain, that you can take control over your own experience and your focus, then you can, and your thoughts have influence your emotions, and your emotions influence your thoughts. So it's like this marriage between your thoughts and your emotions. It's like becoming one. When you're able to understand that your emotions and your thoughts, you marry them together and they become one, and that you understand the influence that each has on the other, then you can influence your thoughts through your emotions. And you can do that by feeling a certain feeling. You know, we have memories to our feelings. You can do it by feeling a certain feeling, and it'll start pulling your thoughts into a lighter place. Or you can start having lighter thoughts purposefully, taking your focus and putting them on things that you like, things that you enjoy, things that you have appreciation for. If you've ever noticed, joy sits inside of appreciation. You can never be happy without it sitting inside of, like, I don't have two hands here, but it's like taking something and putting it in the other. So happiness is always sitting inside of appreciation. You can't be happy about something without first finding appreciation for it. So finding appreciation a lot of times is a lot easier than finding joy. So if you can find something that you're appreciative of, and there's so many things we can appreciate, that we're in these exciting times, that we live in times. We can be appreciative that we have automobiles. I mean, think about 2,000 years ago, they didn't have automobiles. If you wanted to go somewhere, you either had to get on a donkey or a horse, which not everybody had, or you had to walk there. So people didn't move very far from their immediate surroundings, and if they did, wasn't that far, and they had to, it was a trek, and it was dangerous, and there were all sorts of things along the way. Now we can just get in our car. Now we have pillows. We can just get a pillow and we can lay our head on a pillow. We don't have to go collect straw. I mean, there's so many things that we can be appreciative for. And once you start looking at the small things and really looking at the times that we live in, these are amazing times. We're in the times of it's going to be a little bit like strange, but like Bible times, the prophet. We're in times of prophecies. These are the times where, if you really read the ancient textbooks, they were talking about these times. So these are times of immense change. And even finding this video, me sitting here on the side of a mountain, on the side of the mountain in Galilee, and talking to you, even just being on this, in a place where you can comprehend what I'm saying, and even the fact that you found me already shows that you are on a spiritual path, and that you already have so much going for you, so much knowledge, so much capabilities. I mean, the asleep will never find any kind of connection to a video like this. So you're already in a good place. And know that the pain is part of it. It has to be there. It's an initiation. It's you burning through your falsities. It's you shedding things that are not in sync with your higher being. And there's always pain in that. There's always pain in the release and loss, and overcoming yourself in this spiritual existence. So knowing that pain is part of it, and then paying attention that if you're stuck in this relentless with no purpose loops, because once you're able to start shifting out of the pain, if you're stuck in a pain, there is a certain amount of pain that you do have to go through, but if you're stuck in one of these loops of pain that aren't good for anything, sometimes when you're able to pull yourself out of it just by being in the observer point, all of a sudden you can look in and you see, oh, wait a minute, I can see down into that little loophole, and I see what was going on in there. And then that is the way of pulling out of it and overcoming of it. And sometimes it's just fake it till you make it. Sometimes, there are things that you have to pull out of, pull out of the pain of it. Maybe you're not ready for the lesson yet, and keep going on your spiritual awakening, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And then a year from now, when you look back at that little loop that you were stuck in, it's all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. Everything that you've overcome in the next year has already resolved that inherently, instead of getting stuck in something, and stuck in this, because a lot of times even these emotions, they become addictive within themselves. They become like a go-to emotion, and you want to sock. and you want to overcome your go-to emotions in the spiritual awakening, there is no obvious, it's staying open and fluid and constantly evolving, and everybody that you meet is a new opportunity. It's unsticking yourself from the loops of the thoughts. It's unsticking yourself from a certain behavior that every time, okay, I get into this situation, this is my answer. I get into this situation, that's how you go to sleep. That's how so many people are stuck in 30, 40 years of their life going through the same exact experiences over and over and over and over. It's because they have go-to resolves for every situation. They're on autopilot. So part of coming in through this spiritual awakening is coming out of the autopilot. So for instance, no, I'm not going to put that in there. I was going to talk about yesterday. I'll just go ahead and say, because I've already said it. So yesterday, for instance, I was in hermit mode. Yesterday, I was completely clammed up. I didn't do any kind of videos. I didn't even have any kind of inspiration for videos. I feel like I was just like sucked into myself. I went to the Mediterranean Sea and collected stones, and then I packaged stones, and I kind of stayed busy and on the run all day. I left at sunrise, and I got back after dark. So I was pretty much in this movement on the spiritual awakening. So there's all sorts of, we keep on going, and there's all sorts of different places on the spiritual awakening, all sorts of different things that we're going through. But it's staying fluid, staying fluid, staying fluid. And when you get stuck in one of these little spirals of pain, and you can see that, because when you're having progress, you know that you're having progress. You know that you're in the pain, but you can feel that the pain is in movement. There's movement in the pain. There's realizations coming in. You are losing something. But sometimes we just get stuck in these loops, and these loops can last for a long time. And when you're stuck in a loop and there is no movement in it, and there is no sight in it, then know that you can pull yourself out, and you want to pull yourself out. And within that, you can start finding, places to move your focus to, other places, other things to think about, other options. Um, and just start shifting yourself out of it. Start every time you start getting into a loop, have some things written down on a list that go do dishes, go do laundry, go do menial tasks. Pull yourself out, and slowly you can start bringing yourself out of the loop. And then from outside of the loop, you can look in, and a lot of times find much more resolve in that way. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.